most people don't. There wasn't a dramatic decision, no panic, no excitement, just a quiet thought that passed through your mind and felt reasonable enough to trust. Something like, "This is probably overdue." That's how it always begins, not with need, with justification. You weren't trying to change your life. You weren't trying to show off. You weren't trying to escape anything. You were just trying to fix one small misalignment. Something in your life worked, but not as well as it used to. Not as smoothly, not as cleanly. It didn't feel broken. It just felt slightly behind who you believed you were becoming. So you upgraded it. And for a short while, it felt right. There was a calm satisfaction in seeing the improved version sitting where the old one used to be. A sense of progress. A feeling that things were moving forward again. That feeling didn't last long, because the improvement didn't exist in isolation. It existed inside a system, and systems react. The moment the new thing became part of your environment, something subtle shifted in how the rest of the environment felt. You didn't notice it immediately. At first, it was just a faint discomfort, a sense that something nearby didn't belong anymore. The contrast wasn't logical, it was emotional. You started noticing details you had ignored for years. The way something next to it looked worn. The way a supporting item suddenly felt careless. The way the space around it no longer felt intentional. Nothing about those things had changed. They were the same objects, in the same place, doing the same job. But now, they felt wrong. This is the part no one warns you about. Upgrades don't make old things stop working. They make them stop feeling acceptable. And once something feels unacceptable, your mind treats it as a problem. Problems demand resolution. Resolution costs money. You didn't rush out to spend again. You didn't feel impulsive. You just made a small adjustment. Something minor. Something supportive. It made sense. And it worked, briefly. Until the next imbalance appeared. The environment kept asking for coherence. One fix exposed another mismatch. One improvement revealed another weak point. You didn't feel like you were escalating. You felt like you were stabilizing. That's why you didn't stop. That's why almost no one stops at this stage. Stopping feels irresponsible. Stopping feels like leaving things half done. Stopping feels like admitting the first decision was wrong. So you continue, quietly. Weeks pass. If someone asked you how much you spent, you could list each purchase and justify every one of them. None of them were foolish. None of them were reckless. Together, they were expensive. But you didn't experience them together. You experienced them one at a time, spread out, softened, normalized. That's how the damage stays invisible. At some point, you realize your life looks better, cleaner, more refined, more put together, and yet you feel tighter, not financially at first, emotionally. You become aware of yourself in ways you weren't before. You're careful now. You hesitate before using certain things. You notice wear faster. You feel irritation when something doesn't stay nice. Your behavior has changed, but you didn't decide to change it. It adjusted itself. Around the things you own. This is where something important happens. Your environment stops serving you. You start serving it. Rooms become fragile. Objects become sensitive. Normal behavior starts feeling risky. You don't say this out loud. You just feel a low-grade tension you can't explain. People often describe it as stress, but it's not stress. It's compression. Your life has less margin now. Less freedom to be careless. Less freedom to be spontaneous. Less freedom to ignore appearances. The upgrades didn't make your life bigger. They made it narrower. Here's the part that feels uncomfortable to admit. You didn't upgrade because you wanted more. You upgraded because your identity couldn't tolerate inconsistency. You wanted your life to make sense as a whole. And coherence is seductive. Once you feel it, you don't want to lose it. That's why stepping back later feels so hard. At some point, money starts feeling strange. Not scarce, just busy. It's always allocated, always assigned, always spoken for. You earn more, but relief never arrives. Because the baseline moved. And baselines don't announce themselves when they rise. They only make themselves known when you try to lower them. That's when you feel resistance. Cutting back doesn't feel practical. It feels personal. Like failure. Like regression. Like undoing progress. So you don't. You hold the line. You maintain. And maintenance quietly becomes your financial reality. Here is a truth that takes most people years to recognize. You are no longer spending money to improve your life. You are spending money to keep your life from feeling wrong. That's a different game entirely. And it doesn't end. Because the system you built requires constant agreement. Agreement between who you think you are and what surrounds you. Now, pause here. Think about how many decisions in your life are no longer optional. Not because they're necessary, but because anything else would feel out of character. That feeling didn't come from nowhere. It was constructed, piece by piece, purchase by purchase, standard by standard. Here's the sentence that usually arrives too late for most people. The moment something in your life becomes too important to use freely, it has started using you instead. That realization doesn't feel dramatic. It feels heavy. Because you can suddenly see the chain. You can see how one reasonable decision quietly rewrote the rules for everything else. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is why discipline alone never fixes this problem. Discipline fights behavior. This problem lives at the level of identity. The solution isn't saying no more often. It's noticing what saying yes actually commits you to. Before any upgrade, the real question isn't affordability. It's consequence. What will this quietly make unacceptable? What new standards will it introduce? What will now feel outdated simply by existing nearby? Every upgrade carries a hidden contract. Most people sign it without reading. There's a different way to live, not by rejecting progress, not by avoiding quality, but by choosing which standards you allow to anchor your life. When your most visible standards are modest, everything else relaxes. You don't need to perform. You don't need to maintain an image. You don't need to constantly align. You regain space. And space is what money is actually for. Not objects, not polish. Space. Space to choose, space to pause. Space to live without negotiating with your possessions. This is what real control feels like. Quiet, unimpressive, free. If this message felt uncomfortable, that's a good sign. Discomfort means you're seeing a mechanism that used to run quietly in the background. And once you see it, it loses some of its power. This channel exists for moments like that. Not to excite you, not to promise quick wins, but to slow you down just enough to notice what's really happening. Because winning isn't loud, it isn't visible. It doesn't look impressive from the outside. It looks like restraint, like margin, like control. And control is what keeps you in the winning parade, not chasing it.